The Triplet girls in wheelchairs stop in front of a mansion. The billionaire bachelor opens the gate and they say, "Good morning, Daddy." He freezes when he sees the photo they're holding. Holden Mercer hated the sound of his own footsteps. They echoed through the empty mansion, as if the place were mocking his solitude. 25 years old, owner of a fortune that grew every quarter. And yet his dinners were always for one. That Monday, rain tapped on the huge windows of his office. Holden was reviewing contracts with the same expression he wore for almost everything in life, focused, soured, distant, and slightly bored. The clock read 3:30 in the afternoon when the doorbell rang. He frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. His staff knew that Mondays were sacred, his day to work without interruptions. The doorbell rang again, insistently. "Coming!" he shouted, irritated. He went down the marble staircase, straightening the dress shirt that had wrinkled after hours of sitting. He crossed the entry hall, his Italian shoes tapping out a brisk rhythm on the polished floor. He opened the door with a sharp motion, ready to dismiss any lost salesperson or delivery driver, but there was no one at his eye level. He lowered his gaze, and his entire body froze. 3 small girls, around 5 years old, looked up at him. 3 identical pairs of brown eyes, 3 freckled cheeks, 3 hesitant smiles, and 3 wheelchairs lined up at his front door. "Good morning, Daddy," said the girl in the middle, her voice high and timid, breaking the silence. "Daddy." The word hit him like a punch in the gut. The girl on the left extended her arm, holding out a photograph. Holden looked at the image and felt his blood run cold. It was him and Sabine 7 years ago. He was 20, she was 18, and Sabine was visibly pregnant, wearing a floral dress, her hair in a messy ponytail. The world seemed to spin around him. The memory exploded in his mind. Sabine crying, saying they needed to talk. He, young and terrified, cancelling plans, claiming important meetings. After that, she disappeared, stopped answering his calls. When he finally went to her house, Sabine's mother said she had traveled. 3 weeks later, she ended everything by text message. He went on with his life, burying all guilt under layers of work and success. How did you get here?" he finally managed to ask, his voice shakier than he would have liked. "A neighbor brought us," answered the girl on the right, wearing a pink headband. But she already left. Holden looked beyond the gate. No car, no adult in sight. Just 3 children in wheelchairs under the light rain that was beginning to fall. "Our mum is sick," continued the girl on the left, the one who seemed more serious. "She said you could help." A thunderclap cut across the sky, making the girls jump. The one on the right started crying softly. "It's raining a lot," said the one in the middle. "Can we come in?" Holden looked again at the photo in his hands. The 3 pairs of eyes in front of him were identical to his own. "Come in," he said at last, opening the door wider. "It's cold out there." The girls entered, the wheels of their chairs leaving wet tracks on the immaculate floor. "Mum's really sick," said the one on the left. "She's had a fever for 3 days. And who's taking care of her now?" Holden asked, still in shock. "No one," replied the girl in the middle. "That's why she sent us here." Holden looked at his phone, considering calling his lawyer. This could be a trap, some kind of scam. But then the girl with the pink headband stopped crying and looked at him. "You don't like us?" The question completely disarmed him. I don't even know your names." "I'm Thessa," said the one on the left. "I'm Romy," continued the one in the middle. "And I'm Junie," finished the one on the right, wiping her tears. "Triplets." He had triplets. "Where does your mum live?" he asked, grabbing his car keys. "At 157 Oak Street," Thessa answered promptly. "Apartment 3. Holden knew the address, a simple housing complex on the west side of the city, far from the upscale neighborhood where his mansion stood. "Can you—" He hesitated, looking at the wheelchairs. "How did you get here?" "Mrs. Martha has a van," Romy explained. "She brought us, but she said she had to hurry back to work." Holden ran his hand through his hair, thinking fast. "I'll take you back home and see how your mom is doing." "She's really bad," said Junie, her small voice filled with worry. "She can't even get up." 20 minutes later, after a confusing operation to load the 3 wheelchairs into the trunk of his Mercedes, Holden drove in silence through the city. In the back seat, the girls spoke quietly among themselves. "How old are you?" he asked, looking in the rearview mirror. "5," they answered in unison. 5 years old. The timeline fit perfectly. Sabine had vanished from his life nearly 6 years ago. "Do you go to school?" "We study at home," said Thessa. "Mom teaches us, but now she's too sick." They arrived at the building. A simple 4-story structure with no elevator. Holden looked at the stairs and then at the girls. "How do you—" he began to ask. "There's a ramp in the back," Romy explained. "And our apartment is on the ground floor." He helped the 3 out of the car, and they headed to the building's side entrance. The contrast with his mansion couldn't have been greater. Here, everything was simple, functional, visibly worn with time. The door to apartment 3 was ajar. Holden knocked gently before entering. "Sabine," he called, hesitant. The apartment was small but organized. In the living room, a worn couch took center stage next to a table scattered with schoolbooks. On the wall, colorful children's drawings, and in the corner, 3 single beds side by side, turning the living room into the girls' bedroom as well. "She's in the bedroom," said Thessa, pointing to a door in the narrow hallway. Holden took a deep breath and entered. The room was tiny, almost entirely filled by a double bed. There, lying under a thin blanket, was Sabine. 7 years had passed, but he recognized her immediately. The same brown hair, now shorter, the same delicate face, but her cheeks were flushed with fever, and her body trembled slightly beneath the covers. "Sabine," he called, approaching the bed. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking several times before focusing on him. "Holden," her voice was hoarse, "you actually came. What's happening? Why did you send the girls to my house?" She tried to sit up but groaned in pain. "My side, it hurts a lot. I can't even stand up for the last 2 days." Holden touched her forehead. It was burning. "You need to go to the hospital right now." "I can't leave the girls. I'll take care of them," he said, the words coming out before he could think. "We need to get you treated first." Carefully, he helped Sabine get up. She was so weak she could barely stand. In the hallway, the 3 girls watched with worried expressions. "Is Mommy going to be okay?" Junie asked, tears forming in her eyes again. Sabine tried to smile. "Yes, sweetie. She hesitated. "Your dad is taking me to the doctor." "Dad." The word sounded strange to Holden's ears. After another complicated logistical operation to get everyone into the car, they headed to the nearest hospital. During the drive, Sabine breathed laboriously in the passenger seat. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked, keeping his eyes on the road. "Not a conversation for now," she replied, pressing her side. "Not with them listening." At the hospital, the doctors took Sabine in for immediate tests. A severe kidney infection, they said. She needed to be admitted for IV antibiotics. While she was taken to a room, Holden waited with the girls in the lobby. They drew pictures on a pad of paper that a kind nurse had given them. 2 hours later, a doctor informed him that Sabine was stable but would need to stay at least 3 days for treatment. "Can I see her?" Holden asked. "Only for 5 minutes. She needs rest." In the room, Sabine looked less feverish, but still very weak. When she saw Holden enter alone, her eyes filled with tears. "The girls! They're in the waiting room. A nurse is watching them." He pulled up a chair and sat next to the bed. "They're mine," he said, though it wasn't really a question. Sabine nodded slightly. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" She turned her gaze to the window. "You didn't have patience with me. We fought all the time. How could I trust you with 3 babies when you barely listened to me?" Her words hit him hard. He remembered how he was at 20, obsessed with his fledgling career, always rushing to the next meeting, the next project. Sabine, at 18, was still figuring out what she wanted in life. "They're 5. So you were pregnant when you broke up with me." "Found out 2 weeks before. Tried to tell you, but you were always busy." Holden lowered his eyes, guilt weighing on his shoulders. How many times had he ignored her calls, cut their conversations short? And why now? Why look for me after all this time? Sabine sighed, exhausted. I didn't plan it. But when I realized I'd have to be hospitalized, I had no one but my neighbor, and she works all day. My mom died last year. Holden vaguely remembered hearing that news. Sabine's mother had been his high school teacher. Can you take care of them for me? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. Just until I get better. I have nowhere else to send them. He looked at Sabine, trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. His world turned upside down. He hesitated. Why are they in wheelchairs? They were born with a genetic condition that affects the nerves in their legs. They've never walked. Holden felt a tightness in his chest. His daughters. 3 girls he never knew, who grew up without him, who faced challenges he couldn't even imagine. I'll take care of them, he said at last, the decision forming as he spoke, as long as necessary. A nurse entered, indicating visiting time was over. Thank you, Sabine said, briefly holding his hand. You'll need the apartment key. She pointed to her bag on the bedside table. Holden found the simple keychain with a small star pendant. I'll pick up some clothes and whatever they need. Thessa has a list, Sabine said with a slight smile. She always has lists for everything. In the waiting room, the girls immediately asked about their mother. She'll be fine, Holden assured them, but she needs to stay in the hospital for a few days. What about us? Romy asked, her big eyes fixed on him. Holden knelt to their level. You'll stay with me, if that's all right with you. The 3 looked at each other, sharing one of those silent conversations only siblings can have. In your big house? Junie asked. Yes. First, we'll go to your apartment to get what you need. On the way back to the apartment, Holden watched his 3 daughters in the rearview mirror. The words still sounded unreal in his mind. They spoke excitedly about the big house they had seen, wondering what it would be like to sleep there. At the apartment, Thessa indeed had a list. Clothes, medication, favorite books, toothbrushes. Holden packed everything into backpacks, feeling odd going through drawers and closets. While gathering their things, he found a photo album. He opened it thoughtlessly and saw pictures of Sabine pregnant, then photos of her in the hospital with 3 tiny babies. The girls at different ages, always in wheelchairs adapted to each stage. Simple birthday parties, a Christmas with a small tree, a day at the park, a whole life he had missed. He closed the album, feeling a knot in his throat. We're ready, Romy announced from the living room. With the car loaded, they headed back to the mansion. By then, it was night. The girls looked around in wonder at the enormous house, illuminated by automatic lights that turned on as the car approached. Do only you and your wife live here? Thessa asked. Actually, I live alone, Holden answered, realizing how empty that sounded now. Inside, the girls took in everything curiously. The high ceiling, the grand staircase, the paintings on the walls. Where are we going to sleep? Junie asked, yawning. Holden froze. He hadn't thought of that. The bedrooms were upstairs, inaccessible to them. I guess we'll have to improvise in the living room tonight, he said, feeling totally unprepared. We'll figure out something better tomorrow. While setting up blankets and pillows, Holden watched the girls. They were so similar yet so different. Thessa, serious and organized. Romy, talkative and curious. Junie, sensitive and dreamy. His daughters, 3 lives now depending on him, at least for the time being. When they finally lay down to sleep, Holden stayed awake, watching them from the sofa. He felt something stir within him, an emotion he couldn't name. Fear, guilt, but also a strange sense of purpose. Good night, Daddy, Junie murmured before closing her eyes. Daddy. That was how his life changed. On a seemingly ordinary day that suddenly became extraordinary, with 3 little visitors who, without warning, turned his silent mansion into the loudest and scariest place he'd ever known. The first night was tense. The second, a disaster. Holden woke to a piercing cry cutting through the mansion's silence. He got up from the sofa, tripping over his own feet. 3 in the morning, heart pounding, he tried to locate the sound. It was Junie, sitting in her wheelchair in the middle of the makeshift bedroom, crying with a red face. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Holden asked, kneeling beside her. I want my mum, she sobbed, tears streaming down her freckled cheeks. I want to go home. Holden looked around, disoriented. The other two girls were awake, watching. Thessa, always serious, kept her gaze fixed on him as if assessing him. Romy clutched a pillow, looking uncertain. "Your mum is in the hospital, remember? She needs to get better," he tried to explain, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. Exhaustion weighed on him. "But I want her," Junie insisted, crying even louder. "I don't know what to do," Holden muttered, running a hand through his hair. "What does your mom do when you cry like this?" "She sings," Romy answered, still hugging the pillow, "and makes hot chocolate." Holden glanced at the clock, 3:10 in the morning. "I don't know how to sing," he admitted, "but I can try making chocolate." In the enormous, spotless kitchen, Holden opened and closed cabinets, looking for ingredients. No chocolate powder. No milk, only coffee, wine, and frozen microwave meals. He returned to the living room empty-handed and found Thessa whispering something to Junie. When they saw him, they stopped. "I don't have any chocolate," he said, feeling useless. "I don't even know how to make it, to be honest." "We know how," Thessa replied. "Mom taught us." "You can buy what we need tomorrow," Romy added. "We'll make a list." Holden nodded, feeling lost. Those three children seemed more grown up than he was in many ways. "You need to sleep," he said, arranging the blankets on the floor. "And so do I." But sleep wouldn't come. He lay on the sofa, listening to the girls' breathing, thinking about how his life had flipped upside down in just 2 days. 48 hours ago, he was a single man with no children, concerned only with numbers, contracts, and meetings. Now he was, what? A father, a temporary babysitter, a caretaker. Morning arrived too soon. Holden got up before the girls, trying to look more prepared than he felt. He took a quick shower and changed clothes. When he returned, all three were awake, sitting in their chairs, whispering among themselves. "Good morning," he said, forcing a smile. "Did you sleep well?" No one answered. "I'll make breakfast," he continued, ignoring the silence. "Then I need to call the office and tell them I'm not coming in today." In the kitchen, he opened the fridge, empty except for a few bottles of water, half a bottle of wine, and a box of take-out Thai food from last week. The freezer held frozen meals, lasagna, pizza, single-portion microwave dishes. Holden took out 3 4-cheese lasagnas and popped them into the microwave. "Breakfast is ready," he called a few minutes later. The girls looked puzzled at the plates. "That's lasagna," Thessa said. "I know," Holden replied. "It's what I have. I'll go grocery shopping tomorrow." "Don't you have cereal?" Romy asked, poking at the lasagna with a fork. Holden shook his head. Nothing kids usually like. They ate in silence while Holden typed messages on his phone. Rearranging his schedule, he cancelled 3 meetings, postponed a conference, delegated decisions to his team. His assistant replied with a terse, "Family emergency." Family. The word weighed on his mind. "What do you usually do during the day?" he asked, putting his phone away. "Study with Mom," Thessa answered, "then play, read books." "Today is math day," Romy added. "We're learning about dividing." Holden swallowed hard. How was he supposed to teach them? He didn't even know where to begin. "Did you bring your books?" "Yes," Thessa replied. "They're in our backpacks." After the makeshift breakfast, Holden tried to organize a lesson. He sat at the dining table with the 3, opened their textbooks, and attempted to figure out Sabine's teaching method, but the girls seemed distant. They answered with monosyllables, avoided looking directly at him. Junie doodled instead of doing exercises. Romy stared at the windows. Only Thessa tried to concentrate, but she looked completely bored. After half an hour of frustration, Holden gave up. "I think we should take a break," he said. "Do you want to watch TV?" They nodded, relieved to stop the lesson. In the living room, the giant TV was surrounded by Italian leather sofas that cost more than many people earn in a year. Holden turned on a random cartoon and watched the girls. They looked too small in that austere setting, with expensive abstract art on the walls and designer sculptures. The mansion, once his refuge and symbol of achievement, now felt cold and unwelcoming. The spacious rooms, designed to impress business visitors, lacked any warmth. The grand staircase leading to the upstairs bedrooms was an insurmountable barrier for wheelchairs. His phone rang. The hospital. "Mr. Mercer, this is Nurse Adams. Ms. Miller is asking about her daughters." "They're fine," Holden replied, stepping away so the girls wouldn't hear. "How is she?" "Improving, the fever's down, and the antibiotics are working, but she'll need at least 2 more days in the hospital." 2 more days. Holden wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or panicked. "May I visit her today?" "Yes, in the afternoon between 2 and 4. After hanging up, he returned to the girls. They seemed engrossed in the cartoon, but Holden noticed Thessa glancing at him from the corner of her eye. "Your mum's doing better," he told them. "We can visit her later." Their faces lit up for the first time since arriving. "Will we get to stay with her?" Junie asked hopefully. "No, she still needs to rest in the hospital," he said, feeling guilty at their disappointment. "But we can talk to her." The rest of the morning passed slowly. Holden didn't know how to entertain 3 5-year-olds. He tried showing them the library, the gardens, the home theater. None of it seemed to truly interest them. For lunch, he ordered delivery, pizza. The girls ate without much enthusiasm. "At home we eat at the table," Romy commented, "with napkins and everything." Holden felt his cheeks heat. They were having lunch in the living room, in front of the TV, the pizza boxes on their laps. "Sorry, tomorrow will be different." Around 2 in the afternoon, they headed for the hospital. This time, Holden was better prepared for loading the wheelchairs into the car. The ride was quiet. The girls seemed anxious to see their mom. At the hospital, Sabine was sitting up in bed, looking much better. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw her daughters. The girls cried too, telling her how much they missed her. Holden watched the scene from the corner of the room, feeling like an intruder. "How is it going?" Sabine asked quietly once he approached, while the girls looked at the drawings a nurse had given them. "Difficult," Holden admitted, closing his laptop with a sigh. "I know nothing about children." "They're scared too," Sabine said. "Everything is new to them." Holden nodded, speechless. He wanted to ask 1,000 things: how she raised 3 daughters alone, how she handled their special needs, why she never tried to contact him, but it wasn't the time. On the way back to the mansion, he decided to make a stop. "We're going to the supermarket," he announced. "You can help me pick out things you like?" In the giant superstore, Holden pushed a cart while the girls, each in her wheelchair, pointed out what they wanted: chocolate cereal, milk, bread, jelly, pasta, animal crackers, fruit, grape juice. Simple, everyday items that never made it onto his shopping list before. "Can I get this?" Junie asked, pointing to a teddy bear in the toy section. Holden hesitated only a second. "Of course, each of you can pick 1 toy." Their eyes lit up. Thessa chose a puzzle. Romy chose a memory game. Junie hugged the brown teddy as though it were a treasure. At the checkout, Holden added notebooks, colored pencils, and modeling clay he spotted on a nearby shelf. Back at the mansion, the girls seemed a bit more cheerful. They helped put away the groceries, showing him where each item should go, following the system they knew from home. "There's nothing of ours here," Thessa suddenly said as Holden organized the last of the purchases. He paused, unsure how to respond. "Everything is too big," Romy continued, "and we can't reach anything." "The bathrooms are far," Junie added, "and there's a step everywhere." Holden looked around. They were right. The mansion wasn't designed with accessibility in mind. High countertops, light switches out of reach, decorative steps between rooms, the main bathrooms only upstairs. "Tell me what you like. I'll buy it," he finally said. "We can adapt this place." "It's not just that," Thessa said, showing a wisdom beyond her 5 years. "It doesn't feel like a real home." Holden had no answer to that. His mansion had never been a home. It was a status symbol, an investment, a place to impress. There were no birthday memories, no family dinners, no shared laughter. That night, after a slightly better dinner, pasta with tomato sauce he learned to make from a phone video, Holden settled the girls again in the living room. He had bought inflatable mattresses to replace the blankets on the floor, but it was still a makeshift solution. "Tomorrow, we'll see how we can make things better," he promised. Once they slept, he opened his laptop and began researching home accessibility, wheelchair-friendly design, activities for 5-year-olds. A whole new world opened up. The next morning, while the girls were still asleep, he left early and returned with more purchases. A colorful rug for the living room, mugs with fun designs, stools so they could reach the counters, lower hooks for coats and bags. Small things that could start to make a difference. When the girls woke, they were surprised by the changes. "Look, our names are on these mugs," Romy exclaimed, holding up a purple mug with Romy printed in bright letters. Holden had ordered the custom mugs from a shop offering quick service, paying extra for the rush. Breakfast included cereal, milk, fruit, and bread. The girls ate more enthusiastically, seated around the kitchen table, now adapted with cushions so they were at the right height. After breakfast, Holden asked for their help reorganizing the living room, making it cozier. They moved furniture, spread out the new rug, and created one corner for schoolwork and another for toys. "It's better now," Junie said, hugging her new teddy bear. But something was still missing. Holden could tell by their looks, by the way they talked mostly among themselves, subtly excluding him from conversations. He realized that new items alone wouldn't melt the ice. It went deeper. That afternoon at the hospital, Sabine noticed a change in the girls. They were less anxious, describing the new things in the house, showing drawings made with their new pencils. "You're trying," Sabine commented when they had a moment alone. "I'm doing my best," Holden replied, "but I'm not sure I'm doing it right." "No one knows in the beginning," she said with a slight smile. "I didn't either. When will you be discharged?" "Doctors say maybe tomorrow if my tests keep improving." Holden nodded, feeling a mix of relief and, surprisingly, a twinge of disappointment. Part of him wanted more time to get it right, to know his daughters better. Back at the mansion, he made a simple dinner. The girls helped set the table, following the ritual they knew from home. After dinner, they gathered in the living room to watch a movie. Holden picked an animated film he'd downloaded about a family of bears. The girls watched intently, clutching their new toys. Mid-movie, Junie came up to him on the sofa. "Can I sit here?" she asked shyly. "Of course," Holden replied, helping her transfer from the chair to the sofa. Gradually, the other two joined them. By the end of the film, all three were on the sofa with him, Junie almost asleep, leaning against his arm. It was a small step, tiny, but it was something. When he set them up to sleep on the inflatable mattresses, Holden noticed that the living room felt subtly transformed. It no longer seemed so cold and impersonal. There were drawings on the wall, neatly arranged toys in the corner, 3 colorful mugs in the kitchen. Even so, as he watched them drift off, he knew they were still strangers sharing a roof. The ice remained, thin as morning frost. Maybe it would take more time to melt completely, time he wasn't sure he had. Holden was jolted awake by the sound of something breaking. He jumped off the sofa and rushed to the kitchen. Junie was on the floor next to her overturned wheelchair, shards of glass all around. Her eyes were full of tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I just wanted to get some water." Holden carefully lifted her, checking for cuts. "It's okay, glass breaks. The chair can be fixed. The important thing is you're not hurt." It was the 5th day since the girls had arrived. Sabine had been discharged the day before but still needed complete rest. They agreed the girls would stay with Holden for a while longer, 5 days. And Holden was exhausted. Balancing remote work with 3 children was impossible. He'd missed 2 important meetings because Romy had a meltdown, and nearly lost a contract because he was busy figuring out how to properly wash the girls' hair. After cleaning the shards and making breakfast, Holden made a decision. He needed help. 2 hours and 17 phone calls later, an agency specializing in childcare recommended Marla Quinn. Experienced with children with special needs, the receptionist assured him, available to start immediately. Marla arrived promptly at 2 in the afternoon, a woman in her early 50s, with short grey hair, alert eyes, and a calm smile. She wore comfortable pants and a simple blouse, carrying a worn tote bag. "Mr. Mercer," she greeted with a firm handshake. "I'm Marla Quinn." Holden led her to the living room, where the girls were coloring activity books. All 3 looked up, curious and wary. "Girls, this is Marla. She's going to help us out for a few days." Thessa frowned. Romy bit her lip. Junie hid behind her coloring book. "Hello, girls," Marla said, sitting in a nearby chair, keeping a respectful distance. "Those drawings are lovely." Holden watched in surprise as Marla didn't force a connection. She asked no direct questions, didn't try to touch them, didn't demand answers. She just stayed there, occasionally commenting on the colors they were using or suggesting details for their drawings. After half an hour, Junie was the first to give in. "Do you want to color too?" she asked, offering a green pencil. "I'd love to," Marla replied, accepting the pencil naturally, as if she'd always been part of the group. By evening, Marla had gained a small measure of the girls' trust. She helped with baths, knowing tricks to wash hair without getting shampoo in their eyes, how to help them transfer from chair to tub safely. She cooked dinner while chatting with them about their favorite books. Holden observed, feeling both relieved and inadequate. After putting the girls to bed, Marla found Holden in the kitchen, where he was checking emails on his laptop. "They're delightful," she remarked, pouring herself some tea. "And very smart." "It's been really hard," Holden admitted, closing his computer with a sigh. "I never imagined being a father, let alone suddenly, as with 3 kids at once, each with special needs." Marla sat across from him, her wrinkled hands firmly holding the mug. "You're trying to earn their affection," she said bluntly. "You bought them toys, custom mugs, colorful rugs. That's good, it shows you care, but presence isn't a performance." Holden frowned. "What do you mean?" "Kids aren't impressed by grand gestures or expensive gifts," Marla explained. "They need consistency. Presence is repetition. It's being there the 3rd time they call just like the 1st. It's listening to the same story for the 10th time with the same interest. It's staying even when they're not sure they can trust you." Holden reflected on her words. It was true. Since the girls had arrived, he alternated between moments of full dedication and periods of retreating into his work, especially when he felt uncomfortable or insecure. "How do I become a good father?" "I didn't exactly have a role model." Marla smiled. "Be there. Not just physically, but really there. Pay attention to them. Each child is her own world. Discover who they are individually, not just as triplets. And if I don't know what to do?" "No one does at first," she replied, echoing Sabine's earlier words. "But you learn. Sometimes just being present is enough." That night, after Marla left, promising to return in the morning, Holden lingered in the improvised sleeping area. He did nothing special, just sat on the sofa, listening to their soft breathing, watching their sleeping faces. Presence. Something so simple, yet so difficult. The next morning, when Junie spilled her juice at breakfast, he didn't rush to fix the mess and get back to work. He sat next to her, helped her wipe it up, and asked about the picture she had drawn the night before. During lunch, when Romy refused to eat, he neither forced her nor gave up. He just stayed there, eating his own meal, asking about the book Marla had read to them. In the afternoon, when Thessa got frustrated with a puzzle, he didn't offer to solve it for her. He sat on the floor beside her, silently available in case she asked for help. Small moments. No rush, no big gestures, just being present. Before bedtime, while Marla cleaned up the kitchen, Holden sat between their 3 makeshift beds. "Can I read you a story?" Junie handed him a book of fairy tales. Holden began reading, his voice initially tense, then more relaxed. Halfway through, Romy was already asleep. By the end, Thessa was fighting to keep her eyes open. "Good night," he whispered, tucking in the blankets. "Good night, Daddy," Junie murmured, nearly dozing off. "Daddy." It still sounded strange, but a bit less impossible. After a week, a routine was forming. Marla arrived at 8 in the morning and stayed until 7 at night. Holden juggled remote work with family time. The girls seemed more settled in the new environment. One Saturday morning, while Marla cooked pancakes in the kitchen, Holden truly began to see his daughters, not just as a trio of wheelchair-bound kids or a sudden responsibility, but as 3 distinct individuals. They were in the living room, scattered across the colorful rug he'd bought. Holden had purchased some educational games at Marla's suggestion. He sat with them, but soon realized he was merely an observer. Thessa lined up domino pieces in precise rows. She wasn't smiling or speaking, just calculating. Her eyes scanned the game as if she were solving a complex equation. When Romy tried to take one of her pieces, Thessa simply raised her hand. "No," she said calmly. "No anger, simply stating a fact. I'm using that." Romy rolled her eyes and returned to her own game, commanding a small army of plastic figures. She had created a complex story, assigning specific roles to each figure. "Oh, you'll be the captain," she told Holden, handing him a blue toy. "But you have to do what I say because I'm the general." Holden accepted, amused by how naturally Romy took control. She spoke loudly, gestured dramatically, and changed the rules constantly so the game would unfold just as she wanted. "No, not like that," she protested when he moved the figure the wrong way. "You have to go over there, that's where the secret treasure is." Meanwhile, Junie had abandoned her building blocks to dance with a colorful scarf Marla had brought. She spun her wheelchair around, humming a tune she seemed to make up on the spot. Her eyes shone with delight. Moments later, though, she dropped the scarf, which fell out of reach. Her expression changed instantly. Tears welled up, her shoulders slumped. "I never do anything right," she muttered, her voice trembling. Holden stood to retrieve the scarf, but Thessa was quicker. Wordlessly, she stretched out and grabbed it, handing it back. She didn't smile or offer comfort. She just solved the problem as efficiently as possible. Junie hugged the scarf, tears vanishing as quickly as they appeared. "Thanks, Thessa. I'm making a pirate hat now." Holden watched, fascinated. Though they looked alike, their personalities couldn't be more different. During lunch, their differences became even clearer. Thessa ate methodically, cutting her food into equal pieces, drinking water every 3 bites. She barely spoke, never got distracted. Romy, on the other hand, hardly touched her food because she was too busy narrating an elaborate story about a warrior princess who saved a kingdom. Her hands gestured wildly, dropping her fork twice. "Romy, please eat a little," Marla gently reminded her. "But I need to tell how the princess defeated the dragon," she protested, picking up the fork with a theatrical sigh. Junie alternated between eating enthusiastically and playing with her food, making little shapes with the vegetables. One minute she laughed at a joke Holden didn't realize he'd made. The next, she frowned at a piece of broccoli she refused to eat. In the afternoon, Holden decided to take them to the backyard. It was a sunny day, perfect for outdoor activities. Marla helped set out a large blanket on the grass beneath a broad tree. Thessa immediately opened a science book they'd brought from the apartment. It was quite advanced for a 5-year-old, with detailed illustrations of the solar system and planet descriptions. "Saturn has 82 moons," she informed Holden as he sat beside her. "Its largest is Titan." Holden blinked, surprised. "How do you know that?" "It's in the book," she replied, as if it were obvious. "I like facts. They don't change." Romy had brought her plastic figures outside, staging an imaginary jungle expedition. She recruited Marla as the experienced explorer, and Holden as the brave but slightly clumsy guide. "No, no," she exclaimed, when Holden suggested a different path for the toys. "We have to go by the river, or the crocodiles will get us in the forest." Her energy seemed limitless. Even from her wheelchair, she was constantly on the move, gesturing, shifting, rearranging the figures, reimagining the scenario. Junie, meanwhile, discovered a flower bed nearby. Her eyes sparkled as she watched a butterfly land on a petunia. "Look, Daddy," she called, voice brimming with wonder. "It looks like a fairy." Holden came over, noticing how Junie's face lit up at something so simple. The butterfly flew away, and Junie followed it with her eyes, enchanted. When it disappeared into the sky, tears formed. "It's gone," she whispered, as if she had lost a friend. Holden wasn't sure how to respond, how to comfort someone who felt everything so intensely. "Maybe it'll come back tomorrow," he suggested, "or maybe you'll find another butterfly even prettier." Hope replaced her disappointment in an instant. "Do you really think so?" "I'm sure," he replied, surprising himself with his own conviction. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Holden found Marla in the kitchen. She was organizing the vitamins and mild muscle relaxant Thessa and Junie needed, medications prescribed by their doctor. "How do you do it?" he asked, impressed. "Answer each of them differently, knowing what each one needs." Marla smiled, closing the medicine cabinet. Observation. It's the key to working with kids. And you're learning fast. They're so different, Holden said. Thessa rarely smiles, Gachias, but she notices everything. Romy wants to run the entire world. And Junie feels everything like it's brand new. You have 3 daughters, Marla replied, her tone gentle but firm. 3 ways of loving, 3 doors to open. Holden thought about her words. What do you mean? Each child needs to be loved in a way they can receive it, Marla explained. Thessa needs truth, consistency. She trusts facts, things she can verify. Don't exaggerate compliments or promises. Be direct, be reliable. Holden nodded, understanding. What about Romy? Romy needs space to lead, but also clear limits. She constantly tests boundaries, not out of malice, but because she needs to know where she stands. Give her choices when possible, but keep the important rules. And Junie. Marla's face softened. Junie needs emotional validation. Her feelings are immense, overwhelming. Don't try to minimize or fix them. Just acknowledge them. Be there while she goes through them. Holden recalled the day's interactions, how Thessa had looked suspicious when he overpraised her domino setup, how Romy had glowed when he let her set the expedition rules, but accepted when he said it was time to clean up, how Junie had calmed down when he simply sat beside her while she cried over the butterfly. Small moments, big insights. 3 daughters, he repeated, the reality settling into his heart. 3 whole worlds. Marla gave him a soft smile, placing a brief hand on his shoulder. All under the same roof now. 2 weeks had passed since the girl's arrival. The once silent mansion now rang with life. Laughter echoed in the halls, toys were scattered in the living room, bright drawings decorated the fridge. But there was one place left untouched, Holden's office. That morning, while Marla took the girls outside for a science lesson in the backyard, Holden finally opened the heavy oak door. The familiar scent of books and leather greeted him. Everything was just as he'd left it, neatly stacked folders, aligned pens, the computer on standby. A place frozen in time, a shrine to his previous life. He sat in the leather chair and turned on the computer. Unanswered emails flooded the screen, pending reports, contracts awaiting review. The empire he'd built hadn't stopped, even if he'd paused. He worked for an hour, addressing only the most urgent matters, but his mind drifted. Even with the door closed, he could hear distant laughter from the girls outside. He caught himself smiling at Romy's bossy tone echoing across the yard. Then, reaching into the bottom drawer for a stapler, his fingers brushed something unexpected. A small dark wooden box he didn't remember placing there. He frowned, pulling it out. An old cigar box he'd received from a client years ago. He'd never smoked, but for some reason, he'd kept the box. Opening it, his heart pounded. Photographs, old, printed on paper, from before everything went digital and into the cloud. The first showed a younger Holden at 20, hair a bit longer, smiling in a way he hadn't in years. Beside him was Sabine at 18, with longer dark hair, wearing a simple blue dress, looking at him with a mix of adoration and amusement. The date on the back, 7 years ago. He went through the images slowly. Him and Sabine at a park, at a small cafe where they used to study together, at her high school graduation, at a friend's party. Bits of a story that felt like they belonged to someone else. The last photo made his stomach twist. Sabine alone, seated on a park bench, looking at the camera with a sad smile. He remembered that day. They had argued earlier about what he couldn't recall. Something trivial that had felt important then. She'd walked off, he'd followed, trying to apologize. She allowed the photo as a gesture of reconciliation. A week later, she would find out she was pregnant. 2 weeks after that, she would try to tell him. 3 weeks later, she would vanish. He turned the photo over. On the back, Sabine's delicate handwriting read, "We got lost in a chaos we didn't know how to name." Holden stared at the phrase for a long time. It was true. At 20, ambitious and impatient, he had his path laid out. An MBA, a career in finance, his own company by 30, a perfect plan. Sabine, freshly out of high school, was still figuring out her path. She loved art but also biology. She wanted to travel, see the world before deciding. They had been in love, but they were at different stages in life, neither having the maturity to see that or accommodate the other's dreams. They argued over trivial things, schedules, commitments, priorities, when the real issues ran deeper. He viewed the relationship as another step toward success. She wanted a partner in discovery. His phone buzzed, breaking his thoughts. A message from Sabine. "How are the girls? Can I visit them this afternoon?" Sabine was better, but still fragile. The doctor had recommended she not immediately resume all childcare responsibilities. So the girls remained with Holden, with frequent visits from their mum. A temporary solution that, surprisingly, didn't feel so temporary to Holden anymore. "They're great. Marla is giving them a science lesson in the yard. Come for dinner if you like." He sent the message and looked again at the photo. Sabine looked so young, so vulnerable. Not so different from how she looked in the hospital, except with more experience in her eyes now. He thought of his daughters, how Thessa had inherited his analytical gaze, seeing the world as a puzzle. How Romy had Sabine's determination, a fierce spirit that refused to be diminished. How Junie combined her mum's artistic nature with an emotional intensity Holden had once shown only to Sabine. They were living proof that, despite everything that went wrong, something very right had happened between him and Sabine. He put the photos back in the box, except the last one. He placed it in an empty frame on the shelf, a reminder of the past and a nudge for the present. The sound of wheels on the wooden floor caught his attention. He stood and opened the office door. Thessa was in the hallway, watching him curiously. "Marla said you were working," she said, adjusting the glasses she wore for reading. "I didn't want to bother you." "You never bother me," he replied, surprised by the honesty in his own words. "Can I see where you work?" Holden hesitated briefly. This office had always been private territory, but things had changed. "Sure, come in." He helped Thessa maneuver her chair inside. She surveyed everything with her sharp gaze. The books, the computer, the neatly arranged folders. "Is this where you make money?" she asked with childlike bluntness. Holden laughed. "In a way, yes. I help other companies grow." "Like a plant?" she asked, frowning. "Something like that. Companies are like living organisms. They need care to grow strong." Thessa nodded, soaking in the analogy. "What's that?" she asked, pointing to the framed photo of Sabine. "Your mum, when she was younger." Thessa examined the photo. She looked sad. Holden looked at it with new perspective. The smile he once thought was melancholic now seemed to hold something else, resilience he hadn't noticed. "Maybe she was more worried than sad," he said carefully. "Sometimes people look like that when they're trying to figure out what to do. Like when I can't solve a math problem." Holden smiled. "Something like that, but with bigger questions." "And you, were you worried too?" The question caught him off guard. "I was distracted," he admitted. "Too busy looking at the future to see what was right in front of me." Thessa processed the response with a seriousness that seemed beyond her 5 years. "Marla says that happens a lot to adults," she noted. "They get so busy they forget to look." Coming from a child, the observation felt even more profound. Just then, Romy appeared in the doorway, Junie behind her. "Thessa!" "We've been looking for you forever," Romy exclaimed, rolling into the office without hesitation. "Wow, this is huge. Is it like your secret castle, Daddy?" "Something like that," he replied with a smile. Junie came in last, her eyes immediately drawn to the framed photo. "Look, Mummy," she squealed, pointing. Soon all three were huddled around the photo, commenting on how Sabine looked different, younger with longer hair. "You two used to date, right?" Romy asked, glancing from Holden to the picture. "Yes," he answered simply. "And then Mommy had us. But you didn't know," Romy went on. "It was like a super late surprise." Holden couldn't help smiling at her description. "The best late surprise I've ever received." Marla appeared at the door. "Here you are, time for lunch, girls." As he helped guide the girls back to the kitchen, Holden glanced at his office one last time. A room that once defined his entire world now felt like just another space, important to us but no longer all-consuming. For the first time since the girls arrived, he truly felt at peace with the upheaval in his life. The constant anxiety and sense of being on unfamiliar ground had lessened. He looked at the photo of Sabine in the frame and, silently, answered the sentence she'd written on the back all those years ago. "We got lost in a chaos we didn't know how to name. But maybe we can find each other in something new we're learning to build." He closed the office door, not as someone protecting a sanctuary, but as someone simply moving on to the next chapter. Holden drove with the windows down, letting the afternoon air in. The radio played softly, some random song he barely registered. His mind was busy with the questions he'd kept inside for weeks. Marla stayed with the girls. "Go talk to her," the nanny had said, giving him that look that seemed to see right through him. "There are things you two need to settle." The hospital was no longer at crisis level. Sabine had moved to a recovery ward for ongoing monitoring of her kidney function. The severe infection was under control, but it left behind issues needing regular checks. Entering her room, he found her seated by the window, reading a book. She looked different, not just healthier, but more present, as if she had also made decisions during these weeks. "Hi," he said, lingering at the door. Sabine raised her eyes from the book and smiled softly. "Hi. Come in." Holden pulled up a chair, sitting next to her. For a moment, they just watched the hospital staff bustling outside. "The girls are good," he said at last. "Thessa finished that astronomy book. Romy put on a talent show last night. Junie drew a picture for you." He took a carefully folded paper from his pocket. "Oh, a colorful drawing of 5 people. 3 small figures in wheelchairs and 2 tall ones standing beside them, all smiling." Sabine touched the paper gently, as if she could feel her daughter's presence through the vibrant lines. "She always draws everyone happy," Sabine noted with a gentle smile. Another silence fell between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with anticipation. They both knew it was time to address what had been buried for so long. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Holden finally asked, voice low, without accusation. Sabine folded the drawing carefully, placing it on her lap. She took a deep breath, like someone bracing for a heavy lift. "You were in another city, studying," she began, looking out the window. "When I found out, I tried calling you many times. You were always busy. Meetings, projects, deadlines." Holden nodded, remembering those weeks. The investment bank internship, the long hours trying to impress superiors, the ignored calls because he was always in a rush. "After almost 2 weeks, I realized I'd never get you to talk about it the way it deserved," Sabine continued. "So I went to your city, but when I arrived, I got scared. What if you didn't want this? What if you tore me apart for it?" She paused, her fingers running along the edge of the drawing. "I went to see your mother." A cold knot formed in Holden's stomach. His mother, as Caroline Mercer, a practical, ambitious woman who'd always mapped out a grand future for her only son. "What did she say?" Sabine sighed. "Honest, she said, 'You're both too young. He has a future. This will ruin everything.'" Sabine paused. "She offered me money, told me if I wanted, she'd fix it all with a doctor." The words landed between them like stones. Holden closed his eyes briefly, picturing the scene, Sabine at 18, alone and frightened, facing his mother. "But I didn't want that," Sabine continued, her voice growing steadier. "I went back to my mother. I raised them with her." Holden lowered his gaze, moved by the bravery of that young girl Sabine once was, wondering if he would have had that courage. "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling inadequate. "It's not your fault," she replied. "You didn't know, and I had my pride. After what your mother said, I decided I wouldn't force anything. If you couldn't be there willingly, I wasn't going to force you. My mother never told me. I asked her not to. I said I'd handle it my way." Holden thought of his mother, whom he barely spoke to a few times a year about superficial topics. He felt a cold anger but suppressed it. That would be another conversation, another time. After a long silence, he worked up the courage to ask the question he'd been dreading since day one. "And why are they in wheelchairs?" Sabine looked at him directly for the first time since they started talking. Her eyes held no resentment, only a calm acceptance born from time. "They were born that way," she said gently but firmly. "A genetic condition. We didn't know beforehand." She paused, reliving the memory. "It was a shock, yes. The doctor explained it was a rare syndrome affecting the nerves controlling their legs. My pregnancy was already high risk with triplets, and they were premature." Holden listened in silence, picturing Sabine facing all of it alone. "But my mother and I decided they would live well," she went on, her voice resolute. "With difficulty, but with dignity. They never walked, but they've always run in their own way." Something in that phrase moved Holden deeply. He recalled how the girls maneuvered through the house, swift and confident in their chairs, how they turned obstacles into games, how they viewed the world with an unquenchable curiosity. "You did an amazing job with them," he said, the words coming from his heart. Sabine smiled, and a genuine smile this time. "Thank you, but it wasn't just me. They're special by nature. And my mom helped until she passed. After that, things got harder. Why didn't you contact me before? Pride, maybe, or fear, or believing we were better off this way," she shrugged. "But when I got sick and realized I had no one else, I had to swallow all of that." Holden reflected on fate's strange workings. If Sabine hadn't fallen ill, he might never have met his daughters. "They're extraordinary," he said, realizing just how true that was. "Aren't they?" Sabine's face lit up. "Thessa already reads better than many adults. Romy has a natural leadership that will take her far. And Junie feels the world in a way that sometimes takes my breath away." They fell quiet again, but the silence felt different now, not laden with unasked questions, but with a growing mutual understanding. "This is all so hard," Holden finally admitted, his voice low. "I knew nothing about being a dad. Let alone of 3 kids, all at once, each with special needs." Sabine nodded sympathetically. "I'm not surprised. I had 9 months to prepare, and it was still a shock. You had 5 minutes. But I'm trying," he quickly added. "I hired Marla. I'm adapting the house. I'm learning about them." "I know," Sabine said. "They tell me. They said you bought mugs with their names, let Junie paint the bathroom walls with washable paint, and helped Romy build a fort in the living room." Holden felt his face warm, those small gestures clearly meaning so much. "Then keep going," Sabine encouraged. "Show them you care, do things with them, stay. Stay." The word echoed in Holden's mind. Not just physically, but truly committed, something he hadn't been able to do at 20. "I'm being discharged tomorrow," Sabine went on, "but the doctor says I need to avoid strenuous activity for a few more weeks. I still need rest." Holden nodded, understanding what she wasn't saying. The girls would remain with him a bit longer. "I was thinking," he said, the idea forming as he spoke, "what if we take the girls to a park tomorrow? All of us. To celebrate your release?" Sabine's eyes brightened. "They'd love that." A nurse entered to check Sabine's vitals, signaling the end of visiting time. Holden stood up, tucking Junie's drawing back into his pocket. "Until tomorrow, then." Sabine nodded, a gentle smile on her lips. "Holden," she said when he was at the door, "thank you for trying." He smiled back. "It's the least I can do. So honestly, it's what I should have done all along." He left the hospital feeling lighter, as if a weight he hadn't even realized he was carrying had finally been named, and, by being named, began to lift. In the car, he picked up his phone and blocked his mother's number. That was a conversation for another day. Today he had more important things to do, like picking the best park for 3 curious, energetic girls. The sun was shining when Holden parked at Memorial Park. It was Saturday, and families were already spread out on the lawns with picnic blankets and bright toys. Sabine sat in the passenger seat, still pale but clearly happy to be out of the hospital. "Look at all the swings," Junie exclaimed, pressing her face against the car window. "There's a lake with ducks," Romy added excitedly, pointing. Only Thessa remained quiet, her analytical eyes observing everything, taking in each detail. Holden had done his research the night before. Of all the city's parks, this was the only one with full accessibility, paved paths for wheelchairs, an adapted playground, accessible restrooms. He'd called ahead to make sure it was all functional. "Let's go," he said, opening the door. Unloading 3 wheelchairs was no longer daunting. Over the past few weeks, he and Marla had mastered an efficient system. In minutes, the girls were ready to explore. "I'll stay here," Sabine said, pointing to a bench under a large tree. "You guys can go play. I need to rest a bit." "Are you sure?" Holden asked. "I can stay with you." She smiled. "I'm sure. I want to watch you all having fun. Plus, I'd like to see how you manage these 3 rascals." The good-humored challenge in her voice hinted she was testing if he was truly ready to be dad. "Challenge accepted," Holden replied, smiling back. Thessa wanted to visit the ducks first. Romy objected, wanting the playground. Junie just wanted cotton candy from a brightly colored stand. "We can do it all," Holden assured them. "But let's start with the lake since it's closer. Then playground, then snacks. Deal." To his surprise, they agreed without much argument. At the lake, they found a family of ducks gliding calmly. A park attendant sold small bags of corn for feeding them. "Can I buy it?" Thessa asked, eyes shining with a rare excitement. "Of course," he said, purchasing 3 bags. The ducks waddled over, drawn by the corn. Junie squealed when a bold duckling took a kernel right from her hand. Romy turned it into a competition. Who could attract the most ducks? Thessa meticulously counted how many kernels each duck ate, fascinated by their behavior. "They have a social hierarchy, you know," she said, adjusting her glasses. "The biggest one always eats first." "How do you know that?" Holden asked, impressed. "Read it in my animal book," she answered simply. At the playground, Holden discovered the girls had their own methods for fun. There was a swing adapted with back support, so each took turns. Romy loved the speed, asking to go higher. Junie preferred a gentle sway, humming a tune. Thessa observed the motion with scientific interest, commenting on pendulums and gravity. The accessible carousel allowed all 3 to ride together. Holden stood by, ensuring they were safe but letting them savor their independence. "Faster!" Romy shouted each time it spun. "Look, Daddy, I'm flying!" Junie exclaimed, lifting her arms. Thessa simply smiled, a rare and precious smile Holden was learning to treasure. Near noon, they settled at a picnic table under a big tree, close to Sabine. Holden had packed sandwiches, fruit, juice, and chocolate chip cookies he and Marla had baked the night before. "You made these?" Sabine asked, surprised, as he unwrapped the neatly cut sandwiches. "With a little help," he admitted. "He broke 2 eggs on the floor before getting them in the bowl," Romy said, laughing. "And added too much salt to the first batch," Thessa added. "But they're good now," Junie said, already munching on a cookie. Holden realized he didn't mind them revealing his kitchen failures. There was something freeing about showing his imperfections, that he was trying even when he messed up. After lunch, they strolled or rolled around the park. They stopped to listen to a jazz band playing at a small pavilion. Junie bobbed her head to the rhythm. Romy tried to identify the instruments. Thessa watched the saxophonist's fingers, fascinated by the mechanics of it all. By late afternoon, Holden noticed Sabine looked tired, though she insisted she was fine. "It was a perfect day," she said on the drive back, her voice low so as not to wake Junie, who had dozed off in the back seat. "Yes, it was," Holden agreed, realizing it was true. Back at the mansion, Marla greeted them with hot chocolate. After helping Sabine settle into a ground-floor guest room, which he'd adapted for her, Holden returned to the living room, where the girls were excitedly telling Marla about their day. "Looks like you all had fun," Marla commented, smiling at their enthusiasm. "It was the best day," Romy declared, throwing her arms up dramatically. That's when Holden got an idea. "How about we all camp out here in the living room tonight, like a sleepover?" 3 pairs of eyes widened. "A real camp-out?" Junie asked, now fully awake. "Well, almost real," Holden clarified. "We'll build blanket forts, tell stories, and eat marshmallows." "I've never camped before," Thessa said, a rare note of excitement in her usually composed voice. "I know," Holden said, feeling a pang, realizing how many firsts he'd missed. "That's why we need to do this right." After Marla left, promising to return in the morning, the mansion's living room transformed. Holden pushed the sofas aside to make a big central space. He brought down mattresses, pillows, and blankets. With the girls' help, he draped sheets over chairs and door handles to create a network of little white tents. Sabine appeared in the doorway, leaning on a cane, watching with a smile. "Can I join you?" she asked. "Mommy," Junie squealed. "Come see my fort." Night fell with stories. Holden discovered Romy loved adventure tales with warrior princesses, Thessa preferred stories of space exploration, and Junie wanted magical stories with happy endings. Sabine recounted how she used to camp with her father as a child before he passed away. Holden shared how he got lost on a school field trip and discovered a secret stream in the woods. Marshmallows were roasted, or rather gently warmed, over a tiny fire, improvised with string lights under a ring of stones Holden brought from the garden. It wasn't a real fire, but for the girls it felt magical. At 10, well past their usual bedtime, Holden noticed Junie dozing off in Sabine's lap. Thessa fought sleep, blinking heavily as she tried to explain why stars twinkle. Romy was still animated, but yawned more frequently. "Time to sleep, adventurers," Holden announced, helping each girl to her inflatable mattress. "Are you staying here too?" Romy asked, already lying down. "I am," he said, pointing to his own mattress set between theirs. Sabine kissed each girl goodnight and headed back to her room, casting a final look at the scene. Holden tucking blankets, checking they were comfy, patiently answering Thessa's last question about why the sky is blue. Once he finally lay down, Holden felt a small hand grip his. It was Junie who had momentarily awoken. "Good night, Daddy," she murmured, falling back to sleep. "Good night, Princess," he whispered, his voice gentle in the darkness. On the other side, Thessa adjusted her glasses one last time before placing them carefully beside her mattress. "Can we study constellations tomorrow?" she asked. "Sure," Holden promised. "And can we have another campout?" Romy asked, her voice already drifting. "Any time you want." One by one, the whispers faded, replaced by steady, soft breathing. Holden stared at the makeshift tent ceiling, lit by a child's moon-shaped lamp he had bought for Junie. For the first time since the girls arrived, he didn't feel like an intruder in his own home. Or maybe, for the first time, the mansion was becoming a home, a place where improvised campouts mattered more than business meetings, where childish laughter echoed in once silent corridors, where the worth of things wasn't measured by price, but by joy. He fell asleep with that thought, Junie's hand still holding his, the sound of his daughter's breathing the sweetest lullaby he'd ever heard. The registry office had a distinct smell, a mix of old paper, polished wood, and weak coffee. Holden straightened his tie, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. Next to him, his lawyer arranged a stack of documents on the mahogany desk. "Everything's in order, Mr. Mercer," he said, separating 3 sets of papers. "Once you sign, it's official." Holden looked at the documents, certificates of paternity acknowledgement, 3 identical copies except for the names: Thessa Miller Mercer, Romy Miller Mercer, Junie Miller Mercer. His fingers brushed over the paper, tracing the new surnames: Miller, Mercer. 2 worlds joined that never should have been apart. "Any questions before we proceed?" the lawyer asked, interpreting his hesitation as doubt. "No," Holden replied firmly. "No doubts." He signed all 3 documents with the same silver pen he used to close million-dollar deals. But this time, he wasn't buying a company or sealing a contract. He was making official what his heart already knew. These 3 girls were his daughters, not just biologically, but in every sense that mattered. Leaving the office, he felt lighter, as though he'd finally corrected a wrong turn in his life's path. In the car, he called Sabine. "It's done," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied gently. "It means a lot. I'm not doing this for you," he clarified without hostility. "I'm doing it for them, and for me." "I know. That's why I'm grateful." After hanging up, Holden checked his email. He had a meeting with a real estate agent in an hour. Over the past few days, he'd visited dozens of homes, but none met the specific requirements he had in mind. The agent, Elaine Warren, waited for him outside a property in the city outskirts. A highly efficient woman who understood what he needed, even when he struggled to articulate it. "Mr. Mercer," she greeted, shaking his hand. "I believe I've found the perfect place." Holden looked at the house in front of him. Modern, single-story, clean lines, large windows, surrounded by a spacious yard with mature trees offering plenty of shade. Fully accessible, Elaine said as they walked up the zero-step entry. It was built by an architect for his elderly parents. Unfortunately, they passed away before moving in, and he decided to sell. Stepping inside, Holden instantly knew. This was the house. Wide hallways, generous doorways. No steps or uneven floors anywhere. The kitchen had counters at 2 different heights. The bathrooms were large, with support rails and walk-in showers. The windows were low enough for someone seated to enjoy the view. The light switches are also at accessible heights, Elaine pointed out, and all outlets are at least 16 inches off the floor. The architect had thought of everything, not as afterthoughts, but as integrated design. The house didn't look adapted, it looked simply functional and beautiful. There are 5 bedrooms, Elaine continued, all on the ground floor, of course, and the yard. The yard was the highlight. Large and flat, with wide paved paths suitable for wheelchairs. A small fountain in the center, a covered gazebo, and enough space for a garden, a playground, maybe even a pool someday. "It's perfect," Holden said, cutting her off. "But I haven't even shown—" "No need, this is it. How much are they asking?" She named a figure well above the budget he initially mentioned. He didn't blink. "Offer 10% above. I want to close today." Elaine's eyes widened, but she nodded, already dialing her phone. "And Elaine," he added, "I need an immediate occupancy clause. I'll pay cash." On the drive back to his office, Holden called his assistant. "Jake, cancel all my commitments for the next 2 weeks and schedule a board meeting for Friday. I'm taking a temporary leave from the presidency." Silence on the other end. "Jake." "Yes, sir. Just... is everything okay?" Holden smiled, watching the city that once was the center of his ambitions glide past the window. Never been better. Arriving at the mansion, he found Marla and the girls in the living room. They'd transformed the space into an impromptu art studio. Large sheets of paper covered the floor, and the girls were painting with watercolors, using brushes, hands, and in Romy's case, even a feather she found outside. "Look who's back," Marla announced. "How were your meetings?" "Productive," Holden said, shrugging off his blazer and loosening his tie. "What are we painting?" "Our favorite places," Thessa explained, showing her meticulous picture of the planetarium they had visited the week before. "Mine's the park with the ducks," Junie exclaimed, her hands covered in blue and green paint. "I'm doing our camp out in the living room," Romy said, pointing to a bright swirl that, on closer inspection, resembled their improvised tents. Holden sat on the floor with them, not caring about his expensive linen trousers. "I have a surprise," he announced. 3 sets of eyes turned to him, curious. "First," he began, taking out the certificates from a folder. "As of today, officially, you are my daughters. You can have my last name if you want." Thessa took her document carefully, examining it with her usual seriousness. "Thessa Miller Mercer," she read slowly. "Sounds nice." Romy snatched hers excitedly. "Now everyone will know you're really our dad." Junie gazed at her certificate, running her fingers and a bit of paint over her name. "Does that mean we're staying with you forever?" she asked, voice small. "If you want," Holden said gently. Which leads me to the second surprise. He took his phone from his pocket, showing pictures of the new house he'd just bought. "What do you think of this place?" The girls stared at the photos, intrigued. Marla also leaned in, curious. "It's really pretty," Junie said. "Who lives there?" "No one yet," Holden replied. "But if you like it, it could be our new home." Silence. The 3 looked at each other, processing this revelation. "But what about this house?" Romy asked, confused. "Aren't we going to live in the mansion anymore?" "This mansion isn't ideal for you," Holden explained. "Too many stairs, narrow hallways, inaccessible rooms. The new house is 1 story, fully accessible." "For wheelchairs?" Thessa asked, always direct. "Yes," Holden confirmed. "It was designed with accessibility in mind." He showed more photos, the wide hallways, adapted bathrooms, paved backyard paths. You'll be able to move around without all these improvised solutions. The girls studied the pictures with growing excitement, especially the backyard. Is there room to plant flowers? Junie asked. All the room you want. Can we set up a real tent outside? Romy asked. Absolutely. Does it have a bedroom for each of us? Thessa inquired. Practical as ever. It does, and you can decorate them however you'd like. Again, they exchanged that silent, sisterly look. Can we visit before we decide? Thessa finally asked. Holden smiled. Of course. Tomorrow's if you want. Marla watched with a discreet smile. When the girls went back to their paintings, now animatedly debating how to decorate their new rooms, she approached Holden. That's a big decision, she said quietly. It's the right one, he replied. They won't live their lives avoiding steps. The world should adapt to them. Marla nodded, approval shining in her eyes. Does Sabine know? Not yet. I want it to be a surprise. She's officially being discharged tomorrow. I figured we'd pick her up, then go straight to the new house. The next day, excitement buzzed in the air. The girls could barely finish their breakfast, eager to pick up their mom and see the new house. Holden had spent a sleepless night making sure everything was set, furniture delivered, basic groceries stocked, beds made, bathrooms ready. At the hospital, Sabine waited in the lobby with a small suitcase. She looked stronger, color back in her cheeks. When she saw the girls arrive with Holden, her face lit up. My little ones, she exclaimed, opening her arms. They rushed forward in their chairs, vying to be first in her embrace, all talking at once, about drawings, campouts, new last names. Slow down, one at a time, Sabine laughed, trying to keep up with the torrent of information. Holden watched with a smile. Something felt profoundly right about that moment, as though puzzle pieces finally fit. Ready to go? He asked, when the initial wave of excitement calmed. Yes, the girls answered in unison. Where are we going? Sabine asked. Back to the mansion. Not exactly, Holden said with a mysterious smile. We have a surprise. In the car, the girls were bursting with excitement but kept the plan secret, honoring Holden's request. Sabine cast curious glances his way but stayed silent, playing along. When they finally arrived at the new house, Holden parked and turned off the engine. We're here, he announced. Sabine looked out the window, confused. Where are we? Home, Junie said, unable to contain herself. With Holden's help, they all got out. The girls led Sabine up the step-free path to the front door. I don't understand, Sabine said, looking at Holden. Whose house is this? Ours, he replied simply, handing her a key. Her eyes went wide. What? Open it, Mommy, Romy urged, practically bouncing in her chair. Sabine's hands trembled as she fit the key in the lock and pushed open the door. Light flooded the interior. A vase of fresh flowers on the dining table. A banner hung on the wall reading Welcome Home, painted with the girls' handprints. Come see my room, Mom, Junie called, speeding down the wide hallway. No, mine first, Romy objected. Then the kitchen, Thessa added. It has 2 counter heights. The girls disappeared down the corridor, their excited voices echoing. Sabine stayed in the foyer, gazing around in awe. You did all this? She asked softly. Holden stepped up beside her. For you, he said. For us. Sabine touched the wall, as if to confirm it was real. Is it permanent? Not just temporary. As permanent as you want it to be, Holden replied. The house is in the girls' names. There's a trust for maintenance, taxes, everything they need. She turned to him, tears shining in her eyes. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, he answered simply. Because they deserve a place that doesn't limit them. Because you deserve peace after so many years struggling alone. A delighted shout from Romy interrupted them. Mommy! Daddy! Come see the backyard! Holden offered his arm to Sabine, who still leaned on a cane during her recovery. Shall we? I think they want to give us a tour. The backyard was even more impressive in person. The girls had already discovered the gazebo and declared it their headquarters. Romy pointed to an open space, describing the playground she imagined there. Junie found a perfect spot for her flowers. Thessa was systematically inspecting the automatic irrigation system, fascinated. They seem so at home, Sabine said, watching her daughters. They are home, Holden corrected. They stood side by side, watching the girls explore. They were no longer estranged exes with lingering resentments. They were two people bonded by three small miracles who, against all odds, had found their way back to both of them. Holden, Sabine said after a moment, what do you want out of all this? He considered the question, looking at the girls, the house, the blue sky above. Honestly, I don't know. I never planned any of this, but I do know I don't want to miss another day of their lives, and I want to be part of their future however I can. What about us? She asked, calm, without pressing or expectation. One step at a time, he replied. We already have so much to discover and build. Whatever comes beyond that, we'll see. Sabine nodded, satisfied with his answer. In the gazebo, the girls found another surprise. A small table with a cake and drinks. Our new home, read the icing in colorful letters. Are you two coming or not? Romy called impatiently. Holden and Sabine exchanged smiles and walked to the gazebo, where their daughters waited to celebrate not just a new house, but a family that, after many detours, was finally finding its way. The imposing mansion where Holden had lived for years now felt distant, not just in miles but in meaning. Here in a place designed to include rather than impress, where genuine smiles replaced calculated deals, he finally grasped what truly mattered. It wasn't past choices that defined him, but the choices he made now, and he chose to be present. He chose to adapt his world to theirs, not the other way around. He chose to build something new, something lasting. He chose to be a father. In the following months, the new house truly became a home. What had been just an accessible structure turned into a vibrant place where every room told a story. Thessa's room became a mini observatory, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling forming real constellations. Her shelves were neatly organized by subject, each book marked with colored tabs. Romy picked an adventure theme. Old maps covered an entire wall, and a hammock in the corner served as her lookout post. Her toys, dinosaurs, cars, action figures formed little camps around the room. Junie's space was pure magic. Hand-painted fairies, rainbow curtains, small potted plants by the window. A mobile of butterflies danced in the breeze, casting delicate shadows on the wall. Sabine went back to studying, taking an online graphic design course while the girls attended a specialized school 3 days a week. In her spare time, she nurtured a small vegetable garden in the backyard. Her hands, once always tired, now created and made things blossom. The house pulsed with life. Laughter echoed through wide hallways, music filled the kitchen at mealtimes, and the scent of homemade bread often drifted through the air. The wheelchairs glided effortlessly, transporting not disabilities, but vibrant personalities eager to explore their world. One Sunday morning, 4 months after moving, Holden arrived earlier than usual. He had a special gift, a telescope he'd promised Thessa. He never missed a weekend visit, even if business trips required elaborate scheduling. He rang the bell and waited, hearing the familiar scramble inside. It was always a race among the girls to see who'd reach the door first. This time, Junie won, beaming as she opened the door. "Daddy!" she shouted, arms outstretched. Holden knelt to hug her, catching the scent of strawberry shampoo in her hair. "Good morning, Princess. Where are your sisters?" "Out in the yard with Mom. We're planting tomatoes." She spun her chair gracefully and zoomed down the hall. Holden left the wrapped telescope in the foyer and followed her. In the backyard, Sabine was showing Thessa and Romy how to plant cherry tomato seedlings. They all wore colorful gloves and hats against the sun, a simple scene that made Holden's heart clench. These everyday moments he'd almost missed forever. "Look who's here early," Junie announced. Romy immediately dropped her trowel and sped over, dirt flying as she moved. "Daddy, did you bring the telescope?" "How did you know?" Holden asked, surprised. "It was supposed to be a surprise for Thessa." "I overheard you on the phone," Romy said shamelessly. "I don't tell secrets. I discover them." Thessa approached more slowly, trying to hide her excitement, but her eyes behind her glasses betrayed her eagerness. "It's inside," Holden confirmed. "We'll set it up after lunch, but I see you're busy now." Sabine stood, removing her gloves, Her face was lightly flushed by the sun, a smear of dirt on her cheek. She looked younger, more at ease. "Welcome," she said with a smile. "You're just in time to get your hands dirty." "That's exactly what I came to do," he answered, grabbing an extra pair of gloves. They spent the morning in the garden. Holden helped finish planting, following Sabine's instructions. The girls chatted excitedly about their week. Thessa had won a science fair with a solar system project. Romy organized a treasure hunt for her whole class. Junie learned to play Happy Birthday on the recorder. Small victories that, for Holden, outweighed all the deals he'd ever made. After lunch, while the girls rested watching a movie, Holden and Sabine sat on the porch, sipping coffee. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It was companionable, almost conspiratorial. "How's work?" Sabine asked. "Different," Holden said. "I've delegated a lot. I'm not the CEO who puts in 18-hour days anymore." "Is that good or bad?" He smiled, glancing at the blooming garden. "Surprisingly good. I discovered the world doesn't end when I slow down. The company still runs. And now I have time for what really matters." Sabine nodded. "The girls count the days until the weekend. Junie marks the calendar. Thessa calculates the hours left. Romy plans everything you'll do together." Holden felt warmth spread through his chest. It felt good to be awaited, to be missed. "And you?" he asked, meeting her eyes. "How is it for you?" Sabine set her cup down, considering her words. "Easier than I imagined. And harder, too, in a way." "How so?" "Easier because the girls are happy, because we're stable, because I'm not alone anymore," she explained. "Harder because I have to learn to share. It was just the four of us for so long." It was the first time Sabine had been so open about the challenges of this new dynamic. "I'm trying not to intrude," Holden said. "I know this is your place." "Our place," she corrected. "You're always welcome here, Holden, not just as a guest." Was there a suggestion behind those words? Holden wasn't sure, and it wasn't the time to delve into that. For now, their arrangement worked. He kept an apartment in the city, he had sold the mansion, and visited on weekends. "Thank you," Sabine said suddenly. "For what?" "For growing up," she replied with a gentle smile. "For becoming the man I always believed you could be." Her words struck a chord deep within. It wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition of how far he'd come from that single-minded businessman, unable to see beyond his own ambition. "They're everything to me now," he said simply. "I'll always do my best." An excited shout from Romy ended their private moment. "The movie's over. Let's set up the telescope." The afternoon flew by. They assembled the telescope in the backyard under Thessa's watchful eye, carefully following the instructions. Romy wanted to point it at the sky immediately, disappointed to learn they had to wait until night. Junie was enthralled by the telescope's gleaming metal, declaring it looked like a falling star that came to live with us. By sunset, Marla had arrived for dinner. Though no longer a full-time nanny, she'd become a dear friend, often joining them for Sunday meals. "How's our junior astronomer?" she asked Thessa, handing her a new constellation book. Thessa's eyes lit up as she flipped through it. "We're going to see Saturn tonight, and maybe Jupiter if we're lucky." Dinner buzzed with conversation. Romy talked non-stop to Marla about a school play they were rehearsing. Junie showed Holden some new dance steps. Thessa explained to Sabine why Pluto was no longer considered a planet. Watching it all, Holden felt a profound sense of belonging. He wasn't just a guest at the table, he was part of that family. After dinner, waiting for full darkness so they could use the telescope, Junie had an idea. "Let's take a picture, the whole family." "Great idea," Sabine agreed. "Marla, could you do the honors?" "It would be my pleasure," the nanny smiled, taking Sabine's phone. They gathered in the backyard, with the lit gazebo behind them, the girls in their chairs out front, Holden and Sabine standing behind. A simple formation, but representing something extraordinary. A family that found its way through unexpected detours. "Say stars," Marla instructed, aiming the phone. "Stars," they all responded, smiling. But before Marla snapped the photo, Junie raised her hand. "Wait. I want to say something first." Everyone turned to her, curious. Junie was usually spontaneous, but it was rare for her to formally ask for attention. She rotated her chair, looking right at Holden. "We love you, Daddy," she said, her small voice steady, carrying the weight of a simple, profound truth. Holden felt the world stop. Those 4 words, spoken so naturally, hit him harder than he ever imagined possible. "We love you, Daddy," Thessa repeated, her serious eyes locked on him. "We love you, Daddy," Romy concluded, grinning from ear to ear. Tears sprang to Holden's eyes. He made no attempt to hide or fight them. He let them fall, something inside him finally releasing, like a knot untying after years. "I love you too," he managed, voice breaking. "So much. So very much." Marla snapped the photo at that exact moment. Not the posed shot they'd planned, but something infinitely more precious. A man realizing through tears what it means to be truly loved. The girls moved to hug him, 3 sets of small arms reaching out at once. Holden dropped to his knees, gathering them all in an embrace he wished would never end. "Why are you crying, Daddy?" Junie asked, worried, touching his wet cheeks. "Because I'm happy," he answered, smiling through the tears. So happy. "But when you're happy, you're supposed to laugh," she insisted, confused. "Sometimes happiness is so big it overflows," Thessa explained in her matter-of-fact way. "Like when a cup is too full," Romy patted his shoulder reassuringly. "You don't need to cry. We'll love you forever, not just today." Holden chuckled, wiping his tears. "I promise these are good tears." Just then, the first stars appeared in the sky. Thessa was the first to notice. "Look, we can use the telescope now." The girl's attention shifted to the sparkling night. Holden helped Thessa aim the scope, feeling Sabine step up beside him. "Everything all right?" she asked softly. He looked at his daughters, bursting with excitement, pointing at the sky, at Marla patiently guiding them, at the welcoming house they'd created, at the garden that thrived under their care. "Yes," he replied, realizing the profound truth of that single word. "For the first time, everything is completely fine." As the girls took turns peering at the cosmos, gasping at each new celestial wonder, Holden stayed silent, taking in every detail of that moment. This was it, then, the feeling so many searched for and he'd never really grasped. Not the adrenaline of success, not the satisfaction of goals met, not even the material comfort money could buy. It was this, being part of something bigger than himself, truly being there for people who depended on him and who, miraculously, filled voids he hadn't known he had. For the first time in his life, Holden Mercer felt complete, not because he had everything, but because he finally understood what was truly worth having. The love of 3 little warriors who, unwittingly, had turned an ambitious man into a father, an imperfect father, still learning, still making mistakes, but one who loved and was loved. And that, he realized, watching his daughters gaze at the stars, was all that really mattered. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.